Hey everyone, today we are talking about the Nikon Zfc, and specifically this is with the 28mm f2.8 lens. So I was able to shoot with this camera for the past 2 to 3 weeks now, and I definitely have some thoughts on it. Just so you know some of my history with Nikon, I used to shoot with the D750, the D850, and even the D5000 series crop sensor camera way before that. So I had a lot of really nice Nikon glass, you know, like the professional 70-200, the 58mm 1.4G, which is still my all-time favorite lens, and then I switched to Canon. And sometimes I miss Nikon, so I've been kind of looking for any reason to get back to Nikon, even if it's just buying a Nikon body in addition to my Canon stuff. But I wanted to give this a try, so just kind of show you guys the camera right here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. It's a nice looking camera for sure. I like that it has this hidden screen right here. You can flip it around so that it's kind of just more like a modern mirrorless camera, but you have that option if you want that more classic experience. Overall, the build quality on this is pretty good. It's got a magnesium alloy body, so it's going to be durable to a certain point, but you'll notice if you've shot with more expensive cameras, you will notice that when you first pick this up, it feels kind of cheap. I guess some of the things that might contribute towards that are like the dials are wobbly. You know, you can kind of move them a little bit, and you know, the grip right here. Well, first of all, there is no grip, so this is kind of, for me with bigger hands, a scary camera to hold. I like that it's light and small, but I do wish there was something there to kind of hold on to. The outside of the body feels very plasticky, so I think that they did it to save on weight, as they are kind of marketing this as a vlogging camera too. So there's pros and cons to that, but after spending time shooting with this thing, I do think that overall it's got a nice feel to it for sure. I haven't shot with the kit lens, but I do like this paired with the 28mm lens, and with this 28mm lens I think that it looks pretty nice too, for sure. I know when I talk about these cameras I have to step back and really analyze my own perspective on this, because I've been shooting with full frame and even medium format cameras that are at a much higher price point, and you know, this camera, I believe it's starting at $860, which is relatively inexpensive today for getting a nice crop sensor camera. If you get it with this 28mm lens, then that's gonna run you about $1,100. So it's, you know, it's not cheap, but it's a very capable camera. You can do up to 4K 30 frames per second with the whole frame, and this is about a 21 megapixel sensor camera. They're also marketing this as a vlogging camera, like I said earlier, and you can, as with any kind of modern mirrorless camera with a USB-C connection, you can use it as a webcam too, which is kind of nice. Just as a side note, this is a 1 SD card slot camera, so if you're gonna use it professionally, I would probably use it as a backup camera in case your primary camera fails on you. And as mentioned earlier, the overall feel of the camera feels pretty good, although a little bit cheap. But again, this is at a lower price point. It's not fair for me to compare this to cameras that are, you know, $1,500 to $2,000. So, because, you know, my mind goes straight to comparing this to, you know, Fuji cameras like the X-T4 or 5, or even the, you know, X Pro series cameras. And those cameras feel very nice. The build quality on both of those Fuji cameras is, I would say, a lot nicer than this, but again, they're more expensive. If you were going to compare this to a Fuji camera, I would probably say compare it to the XT30 series cameras. Those are at a similar price point, and from what I remember shooting with that style camera, I think it had a similar sort of feel to it. The build quality might have been a little bit nicer, but I can't really remember. So my overall shooting experience with this has been pretty positive. You know, if you're gonna spend $1,100 on this kit, what you're gonna get is really reliable and pretty quick autofocus, and autofocus that is practical for shooting video too. So if you want to start making videos on YouTube or you know, for another project, then this is a pretty decent camera to get. If you're going to be vlogging and recording yourself, it is nice to have access to a screen that flips out like this. I'm actually using a similar type of screen on my Canon R5C right now, and I'm able to kind of monitor everything, the composition and the exposure with a screen like that. So it is, I know a lot of people hate screens like this, but I actually really like it. For what this camera is, I think that it is pretty responsive, is what you would want with a camera like this, especially if you're doing like street photography. Startup time is quick enough. Like I said, fast autofocus. Once you learn how to navigate this camera, you can change the settings pretty quick. There are, you know, some customizable options in terms of customizing the buttons for this camera. I think I would have liked to see a little bit more, because if you look at some of the Fuji cameras, there's a lot you can customize with that. But overall, I was able to kind of change settings pretty quick enough. And I do like that there's a switch right here to go into a dedicated video mode. That's helpful as well. I was able to shoot some video with this camera, and from what I see, it looks pretty good. I probably wouldn't be integrating it in with more serious footage with bigger projects, but maybe some B-roll stuff. At this price point, it's not a surprise that you don't have IBIS in this camera. There is an electronic vibration reduction feature for video, and it worked pretty well. So my biggest dislikes for this camera, I wish it had a more substantial feel. And I know it's nice that it's light, but I wish it just felt a little bit more durable. And I would have personally preferred a little bit of a heavier camera that felt like it had a better build quality to it. Also, anything above ISO 800 on this camera is pretty noisy. You know, today it's not a huge problem. You know, this is a crop sensor camera. Like I said, I've been used to shooting a lot of full frame cameras, but even when I shot the Fuji X Pro 3 and the X-T5, those cameras are also crop sensor cameras, but I felt like they performed a little bit better at higher ISOs. Today it's not a huge issue, because if you look at Lightroom or Photoshop, they have really nice denoising options, especially the new feature in Lightroom where you can use that AI denoise, and I use it a lot. So if you can take a camera, I think I shot a photo with this camera at like 3200, noticed it was really noisy, and then just ran it through the Lightroom feature, and it looks really good. Okay, so overall, if you are a big Nikon enthusiast and you're looking for a vintage vibe with a more modern camera, then this is it's a decent pick for sure. Personally, I'd probably go with the ZF if I was going to invest in some of the Nikon system, but this is, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more entry level, this is you're gonna get great pictures out of this. I would get this if you're planning on investing in the Nikon system. So maybe you want like an entry point, and you might plan on getting the ZF or one of the other Nikon full frame cameras like the Z8 or the Z9 at some point. But you know, if you get this, then you can start to acquire some of the nicer glass. So I would probably start with some of these dedicated primes that match the camera and match that vintage style. I think there's a 40mm f2 lens that looks pretty cool. But then I would start to probably acquire the, you know, what are they, the S series lenses that are very expensive, but kind of slowly acquire that as you make money with your camera. And but if you're not planning on doing that, I honestly would probably just get a Fuji camera, because I like the experience more, the shooting experience, and I like the build quality a lot more. Now that being said, it has to be, I think it has to be one of the newer Fuji cameras, because if you go with the older ones like the X-T3 or the X Pro 2, the autofocus I don't think is going to be as reliable as what you're getting in this camera. Let me know what you guys think about this camera, especially if you've actually used it. And that's it for this video. Talk to you guys later.